Oh, hello and welcome back to the British and Irish Eagles podcast. I am Liam and I'm your host, and we're back for another episode this week. The Eagles go into the bye with a whimper. It was not a good result for the Eagles in Tampa Bay, baked in Tampa, 107 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it clocked real feel. Uncle Tony was there live. He said the only good thing about the day was the tailgate he had with Philly Sports Trips beforehand. It was nice to see some pictures of him with Hollis Thomas and Gail and co. And Jamie, Philly Sports Guy. But oh my God, that was about where the fun stopped for the Birds down in Tampa. So we're going to get into the podcast in a second. We'll welcome in Phil, Fence Mount Stevens, and Tony the Brain Brewerton in moments. Just so you know what's the agenda is going to be like. We're going to give you some updates on some news that'll be coming out of the camp this week. We're then going to get into of course, the good, the bad, and the damn rat stupid this week. Because there ain't no sexy in that show, and then we're we're gonna have a bit of fun. We Tony did a video this morning, posted on our socials, and we got a lot of fan feedback in the UK. So we're going to discuss some of those comments and what the Birds need to do to turn this around, and kind of how the UK and Ireland fan base is feeling right now. So without any further ado, Phil, you were with me at our watch along in Waterloo Leake Street this Sunday just gone by. How are you? Have you recovered from the loss? Talk to me.
I think we all recovered fairly quickly from the loss, to be honest, especially all of us at the watch along. We don't seem to have much luck, because I think people seem to come to the watch alongs with a certain level of expectation, because I don't think since we played the Lions in week 1 in the 2022 season of our watch alongs been particularly successful for me anyway. I know there've been some in between, but yeah, it's I'm recovering from an illness, recovering from a loss, recovering from a bad back. I just feel like I've been through 10 rounds right now in more ways than one.
I feel you, man. I feel you. Tony, how was it watching back up in wee Bonnie, Scotland? How are you, my friend?
I am good. I have taken my usual 24 hours to recover and calm down and let the frustration dissipate somewhat. It was good to get wee Wilma and Sarah Jane involved in the wee video that we put out this morning. They were very excited to see their wee faces on X. So well done to our social manager for getting that one out. Watching the game, I think you guys had a distinct advantage. You were surrounded by 48 other councillors. You were surrounded by picklebacks, cheesesteaks, so you had fat bellies and buzzing heads, no doubt. And by the time it got to kind of tail end of the third quarter, you were probably in a position that you really couldn't give a crap. Whereas
I think I just really had 2 rounds of emotional recovery wings. Genuinely, I ordered one, and I was like, "This is the only thing that's cheering me up right now." So I went and
comfort eating.
I think Liam did the same thing.
I did.
Comfort eating, yeah. I tend to find, that it's never good for us when we have a loss, but our physical and mental health always take a massive tumble. I tend to find myself piling into McDonald's on the Monday after a loss, fizzy juice, all the crap of the day. It's never good. So I'm going to personally hold Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, Jalen Hurts, the rest of the captains of that team responsible for me putting on half a stone since Sunday. It wasn't clever, Liam. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. It's been a busy couple of days back at work. Obviously had yesterday morning off. I hit it pretty heavy on Sunday evening on the alcohol. I was in one of those moods where walking back to the hotel, Katie was kind of like directing me across the traffic roads and into the hotel down in Waterloo. We had a KFC on Monday, Tony. So right there with you. Zinger Tower Burger meal. Thank you very much. A couple of extra wings on the side and a spare piece of single piece of chicken as well. Demolished. Also put on some weight. I've been avoiding all Eagles media, all Eagles beat writers, all Eagles podcasts. I've obviously not been able to avoid it all. The posts about Jalen Hurts specifically are irking me, and I'll get into that on the podcast. However, I've been a big proponent, defender of Nick Sirianni for a few weeks now, and I think for the first time, I'm not going to say I'm out on Nick Sirianni in this podcast, but I am now slightly concerned, and there's one specific reason why I'm slightly concerned, and we'll get into that as we get into the podcast. I do have some exciting news I would like to just share with listeners and that is that myself and my wife have been given the green light to move to the east coast of the United States of America in Q1 2025. It's been something that's been bubbling in the pipe for a while now. With Katie's work, my company have given me the green light to go over there as well. So it could all come crumbling down. These things, there's always a chance that it doesn't go. But I think we're pretty much up to the 90-95%. It's full steam ahead, and I will be dialing in about 3:30 in the afternoon US time next year. Maybe not before the season ends. Could be, but certainly into the off season and next year. TBC on the location, gentlemen. New Jersey, Boston. It's all up in the air a little bit. I'd love to be down closer to New Jersey, so I get to Philly easier. But we'll see how that works out.
Let me just jump in there, Liam. We have obviously got our WhatsApp group, and we speak very regularly as a threesome and mix in there to make it up to a foursome. We know that this has been bubbling for a long, long time, mate. And while it will be weird having you on the opposite side of the pond, we know it's something that you've been working towards for a while, and Katie has as well. So while to a degree we're gutted, we're absolutely delighted for you guys. Very jealous about the move. Really hoping that it brings the promotion that you deserve. And yeah, all the best, mate. I just hope it works out for you guys. I'm sure it will. Get your name on that 35-year waiting list for a season ticket at the Link.
I know,
Just make
right?
sure that there's a couple of spare rooms, yeah, in whatever
Oh
accommodation.
well,
you'll be
so
given
I
over
don't
there.
know if you guys have ever contemplated or looked at house prices in the US. We'll be renting our house out in the UK and renting while we're over there, and it's double the price to rent over there as it is to mortgage. And Katie's like looking at these 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom houses. I'm like, what about this 2-bedroom flat over here, which is a little bit cheaper? Uh, but we'll see. It'll certainly be enough room for you guys to come and stay over wherever we are on that East Coast. Anyway, enough about me. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Phil. Let's get into the game that we probably don't want to get into, but we have to get into. It's our responsibility to get into and to dissect. All right, before we do that, let's just do the news. Since the game on Sunday evening UK time, 1 p.m. local time in Philadelphia, there has been a few noteworthy things that have come out in the press, and I want to. I want to. This is a discussion point for me, particularly, and it's Darius Slay. Now, Darius Slay has always been a very confident young man. Not so young anymore, but he's always been very confident, and rightly so. The guy has 6 Pro Bowls, as he told everyone on Twitter on Sunday night, Monday. Um, he's always been very confident, but I've always found him a little bit of a me person, less of a team guy. I found that when he was at the Lions. Friend of mine, Andy Coates, shout out to Andy Coates. We followed the Lions for years. Said he was like that there, and he's also been a bit. He's also, I found, a little bit like that here as well for the Eagles. Anytime he gets any criticism, he seems to come out and defend himself. That's what he did, Phil and Tony. That's what he did on Twitter and social media. He came out and said, "Why all? Well, I'm not quoting him here, but why are y'all shouting at me? What are y'all coming at me for? 6 Pro Bowls, All Pro. You know, my stats speak for itself." And it felt a bit selfish to me. When a team comes off a demoralizing, embarrassing, disruptive loss, you want your captain on the defense to come out and stand up for his players. And not only that, Phil, but he doubled down on it by going on the Micah Parsons podcast, a rival podcast. Although we do know Micah Parsons would love to see himself in Midnight Green or Kelly Green, he is a rival. And while I know he didn't go all in on CJ Gardner Johnson, he laughed at CJ Gardner Johnson's expense. Both of those things coming off the back of a loss when you need your defensive captain to step up. For me, that is embarrassing. Darius Slay, I expect more of you as a person and as a leader on this team. It shouldn't all be about you, mate. It should be about the team that you're supposed to be supporting. Phil, I'll come to you first. Thoughts on that?
You're right. He's the typical speaks before he thinks kind of guy, and it's great when things are good because you love the banter and everything that comes out from him. You love the fact that he's ready to talk trash and stuff, but when it involves his own teammate on the Parsons podcast, there's a little bit of discomfort there. I mean, I've watched the video done about you guys. I don't think there's much to it. I think it's been isolated to the fact that he's on a podcast laughing and the subject of the laughter is CJ Gardner Johnson. But when you listen to it, it's more along the lines of, guy talks shit, guy has bad game. Ha. That's it. It's like objectively, it's not really anything to talk about. It's just the fact that he is a captain and it is his teammate. And it's just like, dude.
And he tweets it. I think it's the compounding factor of the tweet as well, right? I think if it was on its own, yeah, you're probably right. It might not have been much of a story, but when you not only just go and defend yourself, but then also seem to smirk and laugh at your teammate being ridiculed on an opponent's podcast. I mean, no matter how much he smirked or laughed, Phil, it's not acceptable.
No, for such a senior head, you expect wiser moves. You don't expect a guy of his experience to kind of go, look, I want to. I think he's just too desperate to be liked and popular. So he's happy to sort of play that role and kind of go, the audience want to laugh, so I'm gonna roll with the jokes here, rather than being that guy a bit like Jalen, a bit stoic and kind of going. As much as we'd love to see the personality of him, we also love the fact that he's very mature, he's very composed, and he would never ever even dream of doing something like that. So
unless he's talking about Sirianni, of course. Talking about wise and senior members of a team, Tony Burton, your thoughts on that, my friend?
I think my thoughts are very similar, but maybe a slightly different angle. I'm always very cynical when there's been a lot of pressure on or a lot of chat about a head coach or about a team or about a performance. Now we're going into a bye week. There's lots being spoken about the Eagles' performance and what's going wrong and all the things that we'll get into in the podcast. I just wonder if this is a bit of a deflection tactic. So let's get one of our captains onto one of the program on a fairly well listened to podcast in the US, and it deflects away from the things that I really want to be hearing about, which is the Fangios, which is the Siriannis, which is
you love a conspiracy theory, Tony.
I do, Liam. But do you know what, fella? The amount of times that something will pop up in the news as the main headline, when really the press or our organisation in Philadelphia are actually just deflecting away from what we really want to be hearing about.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. Just an observation on your love for conspiracy theories. Certainly
I love them. I love them.
And there's a few I will not share on this podcast that you've told me before. It's really interesting. I feel like, one, I don't think Darius Slay is intelligent enough to have orchestrated that himself. So if that did happen, then that's something that's being orchestrated by Big Dom and Sirianni and Howie and co. Right? It does deflect away from the glaringly obvious thing that we need to talk about, and that is Nick Sirianni. I'm going to keep the shade away from Slay for now. I'm going to put it down to a mistake, something he shouldn't have said, and I expect to see him make up for those mistakes in the coming weeks. I want to talk about Nick Sirianni, which is probably a surprise to both of you, because I've said on recent podcasts that I believe in his record. I believe in the trust of Howie Roseman. I haven't been enamored with what I've seen from the coordinators, and that I do think the players need to take more responsibility. They can't just all like the coach. I still think all of those things, but I want to I want to bring our attention to a quote from Jalen Hurts that was made this week, and I'm sure you've seen it doing the rounds on Twitter. And that was, I can't remember the exact question it was posed, but it was something like, "Do you and Nick Sirianni sit down together after moments like this and work out what went wrong and form a plan going forward?" Jalen Hurts has had multiple opportunities in the press when asked questions to defend Nick Sirianni or to big up Nick Sirianni or to say anything positive about Nick Sirianni at all, other than saying that they have a relationship and it's a work relationship, it's a head coach quarterback relationship, and they're going to disagree on things and all that kind of stuff. Jalen Hurts' response to this line of questioning really worried me, and that was, "We have our moments." That could not be any more passive aggressive if Jalen Hurts tried. It's, for me, the clearest sign that I've seen so far that there is a serious breakdown in relationship between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. And I've not been on that conspiracy bandwagon before, and I've been against it before, but now I'm starting to see too much of it. And that's what worries me. Tony Fletcher came on the podcast last week, and he said as long as Nick Sirianni has the backing of the players, and as long as the players are backing him publicly, then it's not something to be concerned about. I wonder whether this is the first crack that we're going to see that's gonna tumble, turn into a fissure in the Eagles organization. Shout out to my geography teacher there for remembering what a fissure was. What are your thoughts, Phil? Again, I'll come to you first. I know you and Tony are more out on Sirianni than I am. I'm not looking for an "I told you so" because I don't think we're there yet. But that comment specifically from Jalen Hurts really concerns me more than anything I've seen so far come out of that dressing room.
I think it feels like it's following for those of us that are sort of maybe in a few stages down the line, in the stages of grief or
Grief.
stages of being out on Nick Sirianni. It kind of doesn't deviate from the path that we're on. We're not kind of going, "Oh, well, that changes how we feel." It's kind of
Yeah,
like that
sure.
makes sense for
You're
how
like,
we
that
feel.
makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, and this isn't really the first comment that Hertz has made that you can kind of construe in that way. Maybe not so short, sweet, and concise to the point to say that, clearly there's something not right there. He's been very limited in what he's saying, and he's been very deliberate on being limited in what he's saying, and he's clearly just doing the right thing. Like I mentioned earlier with the Slay situation, that's what you do when there's problems. You try to limit the amount of exposure you have on the subject rather than going on a podcast and talking about it.
Do you
It's
think that's
bad.
good enough from Jalen Hurts, Phil? Sorry, I just want to
Yeah.
flip this around to Jalen Hurts for a second as well. Tony, I want your opinion on this too, obviously, because I've been thinking a lot the last 24 hours how much I love Jalen, how much of a great leader I think he is, how much of a great human being I think he is. I'm not sure I like this about Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure I like this part of his character and personality. Tony, you know
me,
what? Tony, sorry, just briefly, Phil. Sorry. In a big organization, if you've got a problem with someone, you don't air it out on a Teams call, right? You talk to them one on one. If needs be, you go to their boss and have a conversation if it's not really not working, and you deal with that stuff indoors. But on the face of it, on the call, you're polite, you're cordial, you're respectful, and then you deal with it not in public. It feels like Jalen Hurts is on purpose doing this to make a silent statement, if you will. And I'm not sure I like that.
You've got to wonder what's going on behind the scenes, Liam, because you're right. You don't criticise whether it's in a very marginal way or in an attempt to be subliminal about something. One of the criticisms we've had of Jalen, and there's all the memes that go along with it, is Jalen is always Jalen. He's always extremely considered. He's always very careful about how he words things so he doesn't get picked up. He's very well schooled in press conferences.
Never get
And I
too
would
high,
be
never get too low. Saquon Barkley came
correct.
out and said the other week that
Correct.
it was one of the best things he learned from since coming to the Eagles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But for Jalen to go ahead and say something like that, there must be someone in the organisation that's backing him,
Mm.
because I'm with you, and you know how I feel about Sirianni, and we'll no doubt come on to that in a bit more detail as we go through the
Mhm.
pod tonight.
Mhm.
But that's a change in tempo from Jalen, and
Yeah, I think so.
I can't see why, if there wasn't some form of internal conversation that had happened, why Jalen would all of a sudden, having been quite a positive calming influence on the whole Jalen Nick situation. I can't see why now he would sharpen a knife. And while it was subtle, it
Mm.
was still definite,
It was
and
loud,
it
subtle,
was
wasn't it?
it was deafening. And I have to say, I'm very disappointed. I just, if there
In Jalen.
is, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's just good question I'm posing. Yeah.
and in the organisation, if there's a fracture there,
Mm.
then fix the fracture. Let's not do it publicly. But
Can I,
Yeah. Phil,
sadly,
yeah.
the situation that we're in, the pressure that we're under, the pressure that these guys are under right now, someone's going to be left to hang out to dry. And with the contract that Jalen's on, with
Yeah.
the with the general feel of um, the broader Eagles fan base, that there's only ever going to be one winner if it comes down to a square goal between Nick and Jalen. There is only going to be one
Cheer,
winner, and we
cheerleader
know
and your
how he's
starting
going to how he's going
quarterback.
to. Yeah, exactly.
can
Sorry,
I
Phil.
just?
Go on.
No, I wanted to interject kind of because can I just understand where your interpretation of the phrase "we have our moments" is for you two?
Yeah.
Because I'm
Sure.
maybe getting the feeling that you two are coming at it from the angle of we have our moments, as in, we have our moments, like that kind of cliche
No.
of
No.
like
Yeah.
we disagree, or we have our moments where we discuss the plays. Because the context of the quote is the question
Yeah.
was,
Let me be
you, you,
clear. I know exactly what you're saying. And let me say this, Phil. It's not what he said, it's what he didn't say. That's where I'm coming from.
okay,
So forget the words, we have our moments and what that meaning is interpreted. It's the opportunity he had to say something positive and
hmm
choosing not to do that. That is, so it's not the we have our moments, it's what he didn't say in that situation. That is where I'm coming from.
For
And that's
me,
the
for
same
me,
for you, Tony.
it's a bit of both. He
Mm.
he could have he could have poured water on the flames. The media were obviously stoking at the time. He could have chosen to say nothing. He could have chosen to have embellished on what he said, but the way that he just left it hanging was a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah,
yeah,
agreed.
okay, that's fair enough. I accept that. I think for me, I just don't feel as strongly, and the reason I don't feel as strongly as you, I'm not saying I'm not on the path to where you guys are. He's been like it for a while, but not like this. I'm not saying not compared, but in general, I've always found myself quite frustrated with his press conferences and his succinctness of
Hmm.
his answers. It's not out completely transitioned from the norm. But I agree with what you're saying. I just feel like are we maybe making a slightly bigger leap than what is actually there right now?
I completely hear you, Phil, and I know exactly what you're saying. It's not this is not an abnormal statement for Hertz to make, but the situation is abnormal,
Yeah.
and I think that's where I'm coming from. Like it's there hasn't been as much pressure on Nick Sirianni ever as there has been as there is right now. At any point in the career in a relationship between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, and
I
if you have
just
a good relation, if you have a good relationship with Sirianni, or if you think highly of him and you want to defend him at this really important conjecture when the media is literally shitting all over him, you come out and you say something positive. You don't say something like that. And I think it's again, it's less the words he said, it's more the situation, the timing, and what he didn't say in that moment, what he chose not to do, is why I think it's so deafening, as opposed to it being anywhere too different to what we've heard him say before. Because I agree with you, it's very similar to stuff he said in the past. But the timing, the situation, the pressure, and the opportunity as a guy who's supposed to be stepping up his leadership qualities this year, and that's been well talked about. I think it's really, really poignant, and it's so poignant that it's made me now, for the first time, question whether Nick Sirianni is going to be the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles by week 10.
It's not a nothing statement. No, it's fine. I agree.
Yeah.
I just wanted a bit more.
No, it's great conversation. I mean, well, I hope the listeners enjoy listening in, and obviously we love your feedback on that. But we must move forward with the news. So also this week, just an update on the conditions of some of the players who were playing against the Bucks. Jalen Carter was confirmed as having cramp. Ghost Reed Blankenship was playing with food poisoning throughout the entire game. What a hero he is. Nick Sirianni, Bill Belichick rumors have been going around. I want to pick that up in a little bit because we've just talked about Nick Sirianni. And pretty recently, in the last hour or so, Vic Fangio has come out to say that Cooper DeJean is trending towards playing at nickel. That's not a verbatim quote, but it's pretty much what he said. He said he's pretty much there. And with the bye week, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last we've seen of Avonte Maddox, who got rinsed again this weekend, just gone by, and should probably be in the bad column if he isn't already. And one more thing, I was watching Good Morning Football today. Roger Goodell confirmed that the kickoff return will be moved to the 35-yard line if it's a touchback in the end zone. He said it will happen certainly next season, if not sooner. They're meeting up as a committee next week to discuss when that will be brought in. I know that's a bit of a wider NFL discussion, but I think it's quite cool, and I think it's a good move. Some people say it should go to the 40. I don't know if I believe that. Then you only need to make 10, 12 yards with these kickers to get a field goal these days, and how far they can kick it. But 35 yards seems to be a better solution for me. All right, let's get into it. Eagles versus the Bucks, 33-16 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The good, the bad, and the damn right stupid. I feel like we've talked about some negativity already, which is allowed. Should we talk about a little bit of positivity before we go straight back into the negative? Sounds like a plan. This one's a funny one because while this is a positive, there's a reason for me. There's a reason for me. Someone else should be in the negative. Saquon Barkley. The guy has been up for either Damn Right Sexy or Luck Lomond play of the week, which is going to be actually, I do know what the Luck Lomond play of the week is, but Tony, I'm sure you'll have an idea as well of what that is. But Saquon Barkley, 10 rushes for 84 yards, continues to be consistent. Easily would have had over 100 yards, would have been in the running for Damn Right Sexy if we were even going to award that to anyone this week, which we are. We're not. It's just the damn right stupid this week. Another great performance from Barkley, a real leader that continues to grow. The only thing I'm now concerned about is this team good? Is this team as good as Barkley thought it was when he came in? Because he came here to win a Super Bowl. Yeah, whoever's putting those notes in the chat, that's exactly what I was thinking. So well done. Good stuff. I don't think we need to cover this in too much detail, Phil or Tony, but Saquon Barkley continues to be the guy we know and love, and another strong performance when he got the ball.
We were saying it at the watch along. It's that awkward moment in the third quarter, I think, where there was sort of like signs of life, but there was several injuries that had come out, halftime, the cramps and all that sort of stuff. And I think we kind of all came to the consensus that, you're at this point where it's like, do you tank or do you go for it? It's like, I think at this point in time, with the bye week and with the players that we've got out now, the situation as it is, it wasn't worth playing him much more than we did. But he still managed to get 84 yards on 10 carries with an exceptional 65-odd yard run that set up one of the touchdowns. So he's still contributing. It's good to have him here but it's also good to make sure that he's around and the availability of him. So it's one of those small lights in an otherwise dreary afternoon, but it's just still, we say it every week, it's just exceptional to have him in the team. In spite of these performances, we're still getting this kind of performance out of this individual.
The yards per carry is off the charts compared to the last year to Giants as well. He genuinely looks like he's as good, if not better, than he was when he came out of college, which is when he blew the socks off everyone. I'm feeling very, very good and confident. If he stays healthy for the next 2-3 years, the Eagles are going to have an unbelievable player. They have At the moment, you could argue he's the best running back in the league, although Derrick Henry is making everyone run for the money at the moment, the absolute monster. However, what I do want to say is Derrick Henry is getting a lot of juice for this 21.3 miles an hour run and how it was faster than a chain and he's 50 pounds more. And we'll forget that Saquon Barkley ran for an extra zero point 0.3 miles per hour last week and it still holds the record. And there was an Instagram poll, top 5 fastest running backs in the league today. Saquon Barkley didn't even make. Oh, come on, get with the program, guys. Tony, I want to. I'm not going to go to you to Saquon because I don't think there's anything more to say on that unless you feel strongly. But I wanted to go to you with Quinion Mitchell. Another incredibly strong performance by the rookie. How impressed are you right now?
Well, we sat the pod last week, Liam, and you and I debated whether or not we thought that Quinion had been lucky, and how to slam that door in their face. He
I
was
completely feel the same. Yeah,
he was outstanding, and if anything, I would suggest that a guy that we've already spoken about on the pod this evening was called into question, because any time that Baker threw the ball towards Q, he was locked down. He was absolutely superb. And one of the shining lights that came out of that game was not only did he start the game like he meant to go on, but he finished the game. And there's just never a doubt in my mind. And when you're talking about some of the guys that we were up against on Sunday and the speed that Baker Mayfield was getting the ball out at, going against K. Dot and particularly against Godwin and what's he called, Mike Evans. Those are pretty decent wide receivers, and to have the stats that Quinion got from the game is just superb. So yeah, no issues there at all. I'd off my cap. He gets pass marks for me easily this week.
Yeah, and I just want to say I formally apologize and retract my statements from the previous podcast. It was a slight concern for me. It was something that I think I was maybe looking into a little bit too hard. Quinion Mitchell, absolutely sensational. Kudos to you. I am delighted we've got you locked in now for hopefully the next 10 plus years, just in terms of those stats we were talking about. 6 tackles and his third pass breakup of the year so far for the Eagles. Kudos to Quinion Mitchell. Well done, sir. We're going to need that kind of performance out of you every week, especially if Slay performs like he did. Like he did this week just gone by. I don't know who the guy's name is on Twitter, but he has this thing called a hot seat, which is when an elderly player is in the hot seat and looks like they may be falling off, and he's been officially put on that this week. I'm not all the way there. Yeah, I think Slay had a pretty good camp and a decent first couple of games, if not spectacular. But it was a bad day for Slay. He has had a couple of bad games in the past where he's got burnt for a lot and he's come back. So let's hope he does that and we can at least get the rest of the year out of him. But I think this will be his last season for the Eagles. I would be surprised if it's not. I'd need to check his contract situation to be 100% committed on that, but I would be surprised.
Let me just jump in there, Liam.
Yeah, go.
I think it's testimony. Cast your mind back to last year when we were absolutely, raping and pillaging the door of, all of our very favourite cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Bradbury.
the reason, obviously, yeah. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to mention him on the pod anymore. Incidentally, he should be coming back in the not too distant future. I wonder if he would make a difference. But if you remember to last season, we were all out on James Bradbury. He had an appalling time. Now, Darius Slay wasn't touched in terms of targets last year because Bradbury was so bad.
Mm.
And you just wonder this year if offensive coordinators that we're playing against and quarterbacks are looking at Mitchell and saying, actually, I fancy my chances better with Slay.
Yeah,
Correct. So to a degree, Slay has got a pass for the last year as a result of Bradbury being so bad. And you just wonder whether or not people are now looking at Slay and saying, you're old, you're a bit slow, you're a bit noisy. Let's test you out, son. And he's been found wanting.
It's a good theory. It's a good theory. I think it's a little harsh on Slade to say it's a pass last year, because I think when you look at the stats in terms of um, his play when he was targeted last year, it was still pretty good. It wasn't as good as the year before, but it was good. But I don't feel strongly enough about it to say you're wrong, Tony. I do think they definitely definitely had some form of a pass, and it'll be. What I will say, is, if Cooper DeJean plays at nickel cornerback and plays as we expect him to play, and Quinyon Mitchell continues to play at the level he's playing at, I feel pretty good if people are still targeting Darius Slay. Like, if that's their go-to guy who they're going to target, I'm still confident enough that Darius Slay is going to be up to the challenge on that. I'd be like, if it was Bradbury still, or if it was if Maddox was in for the rest of the year, then I'd be more concerned. If you're going to tell me that Darius Slay is who they're going to target, I'm all right with that. I'm not too concerned about that. I could be in my words in 2 or 3 weeks' time, mind you.
I'm fine. I'm fine with Cooper DeJean taking the field as long as no one else from the special teams is on the field at the same time as him, because he won't last particularly long, particularly if Keely Ringo or or Isaiah Rogers is there.
I know. A really interesting interview with Isaiah Rogers after the game, explaining what happened. So he did push him on purpose, and seemed to suggest that other times it can be not called, and sometimes it can be called. I don't know enough about the rules around that, but he said he was surprised that it was called.
My understanding, my take from that, sorry Phil, my take from that was that he didn't fully understand the rules, and he thought that if he pushed him in, it would be a roughing the receiver or whatever, and they would get the play called. It seemed to me as if he mistakenly interpreted the rules. Yeah, sorry, Phil.
Do you have another opinion on that?
Only from the side of it kind of came down to I see where he's coming from. It's that sort of dark arts things that sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. It just depends on how egregious it is, and that's why in sort of soccer you get players flopping all over the place, because you have to sell these things. So, like, if you are a player running towards the receiver in the guy getting the ball to take it back, you're gonna the returner. God, I don't know why my brain just
was
shut
wondering
down
the hell
for a
I was going to
second.
take to get that word out.
But it's almost like, in the same way that kickers will sell it, QBs will sell it to get the roughing the passer, the roughing the kicker calls. It's just one of those things. It's a Derek Barnett play for me. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, just don't fucking do it. Don't be an idiot. Like, he was probably gonna go. I said it in the watch line. I said it looked to me like he was already gonna go into the receiver anyway.
He
The
didn't
returner.
push him that hard. I mean,
He didn't push him that hard, but he was already going. It's almost like you probably could have got away with it just by like not doing a thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I also appreciate that in these situations you try to gain the little edges here or there and a little touch, and you get away with it. Genius.
Just
it
not
doesn't
sure
work.
that was
You're
the
an
time or
idiot.
the place to get the little edge, considering we were getting absolutely mullered by the Buccaneers at that point in time already. I'm not going to touch too much on Dallas Goedert. He did good. He 7 for 8 for 62 yards, but it's not. He didn't have a great game. He did drop a key pass on third down. So good to indifferent, maybe. I feel on Goddard. He stepped up the week before when we needed him. He can only catch what's thrown to him, I suppose. So 7 from 8 is pretty good, and he doesn't call the plays. Maybe more on Kellen Moore. Okay, I'm ready to talk about the bad. Oh, hang on, no, sorry. We'll do the Loch Lomond play of the week first. So, Mr. Tony Burton, over to you, sir.
Well, there's not really a wealth of choice here. There was the Saquon run. There was a couple of other plays, I guess, you could talk about, and you could give some flowers to Reed Blankenship for just his tenacity and his want to be out the field, given his illness. But of course, there is only one that we can give the Loch Lomond play of the week to, and it was actually a play that brought us back into the game. The Bucks had just scored their touchdown. Step 17. Up. Yep. Step up our special teams for at least one decent play that they made in the game, and they never assaulted any of their own players during it. But the endeavour, the effort, particularly in that blistering heat, to return, or for Keely Ringo to return that for a 2 point set, a 2 point game, brought us back within 2 touchdowns. We were going to be receiving the ball, and I tell you, anyone that's listening to this that didn't just have a wee glimmer of hope
Oh yeah.
that came from that, that of course was quickly snuffed out. But
You're gonna
no,
laugh.
that's a lot.
You're gonna laugh at what I've got to say on this, Tony. So obviously, because you weren't there, so I had gone downstairs to get a drink or something. I can't remember what I was doing. I'd gone downstairs briefly with another British and Irish Eagles member, and I saw on the TV downstairs the block punt, and then it being returned all the way. I then ran back upstairs to the Nick Foles bar, proceeded to jump on the table in front of the TV, and cheer in front of everyone and sing a song. Now, here's the embarrassing part.
There's a delay.
No, I didn't know
Oh, that would have been brilliant.
I didn't know the rules as well as I thought I did. So when they blocked that and they went to score, I had wrongly assumed that they had scored a touchdown.
6 points, yeah.
6 points. So I was all in on the hope. Like, I was like, okay, that's 30-20, I think it was going to make it, or something like that, or 27-10, or sorry, 27-20, whatever it was. I was like, it must have been like 20. Anyway, whatever it was, I thought it was going to be 27-20, and I was going ballistic, like jumping around, hugging people, love bites, the whole fucking shebang. And then I saw the score, and it deflated me so much. Like this ecstasy, which would have been much had I just known it was a 2 point play, I would have been ecstatic anyway. But the fact that I thought it was 6 points, and then it became two, was so disheartening for me. Also, what an idiot for not knowing the correct rules on that play as well.
It's the
Um,
hope that kills you, Liam.
it's
Oh,
the hope that kills you.
I think a lot of people were probably in that situation. I'm always like with the blocked returned, the extra points, the 2 point conversions that get returned. It's like that's still a side of the understanding of the game for me that I'm like, is this a 6 point or is this a 2 point one? But it's I think what annoys me is that for the effort and the exceptional play to stay in bounds, to run, the
Oh,
speed,
it was fantastic.
it deserves more than 2 points. I
Yeah,
understand there's reasons why it deserved more than 2 points. I think let's put it that way.
Well,
Oh,
he's won the Loch Lomond's Play of the Week. You know, what more does the
absolutely.
boy want? Oh,
On that note, let's go to the Loch Lomond ad read, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the bad, which I know you can't wait to hear. Speak to you in a minute.
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuren to suit any taste palate. Celebrate greatness on and off the field this season with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar, fly Eagles fly.
Sounds a little bit like what it was like in the at Passyunk Avenue this Sunday just gone by, although not as frequently sang as on other watch-alongs. Although, Phil, give me a little bit of juice here. I tried so hard to rile everyone up. By the end of the fourth quarter, in which we were down 24-0 or 28-0, I had completely, and I mean completely, lost my voice.
I think you'd lost your voice by the end of the first quarter. To be honest, you were
No, that's
doing.
what I'm saying. End of the first. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said fourth.
No.
It was ridiculous how many Eagles chants you tried to get going, despite the fact that we hadn't had a single yard on offense, and we were we were all sat there equally. We were just laughing. I think we were just equally just like stressed, pissed, pissed off, but also just pissing ourselves laughing because it's like every time there was like a throw and it was caught. Hey! It's just like I think even at one point I said, "Right, Liam, we've had enough." But no, to be fair, it's one of those things where I think otherwise the mood just sort of
Oh, it would have been
slowly
horrendous.
creeps down, and it would have been much more unbearable. It gave us something to laugh about, something to get involved. And at the end of the day, watching you get a little bit drunk and scream yourself hoarse is probably the most entertainment we had all night.
I'll take that. I'll take that. If I can make a fool of myself to keep everyone happy, then I will do that every single day of the week. Every single day of the week. All right, let's turn these smiley faces upside down into frowns, and let's talk about the bad of the good, bad, and damn right stupid. I have no idea who we're gonna give the damn right stupid. By the way, we're gonna have a little think about that while we're doing this. And I want to do the first one in the bad column because I feel really passionate about it. So, Phil, I'm going to pass over the tackling to you.
Well, I think everyone knows 16 missed fucking tackles. Some of them were so bad. I think I was like, it's like there was a lag. Like somehow the Eagles were playing with like severely impaired broadband connection. And it was just like, what are you aiming for? Like, you know, when you like, we've all played a first-person shooter, and you're like, ha ha ha, I've got you right in my sights, and you
Brilliant.
fire, and then it glitches, and the guy's about 16 feet to the right, and you're like, what? And then when you watch the replay back because they've come around and killed you, you kind of realize that where you were aiming was just nowhere near where they were. So anyway,
that. Can I just say, that's probably the best thing you've ever said on this podcast in 4 years.
Well,
The
thanks.
Eagles were playing with bad bandwidth. I absolutely love it.
It makes the most sense. There must be some sort of glitch in the matrix because there's no physical reason in reality where that should have been
It was
acceptable.
embarrassing.
44 missed tackles in 4 weeks, so 4 games, first 4 games of the season, 44 missed tackles. It's a terrible. I think they're about 5th from bottom in the league. The players were sliding right off them as if they'd just come from a P Diddy party. I don't know what was going on with the.
Who put 50 pence in you today?
That was the worst thing about it. I mean, credit to Sam at the watch party. He was got a little bit drunk, but he was so angry, and he was just all of us personified in one person, just one big fuck. Every time a tackle was missed, and we were right there with him.
Shout out to Sam because he was on the trip with us last year as well. He's a passionate.
I'm an introvert, so I just go within myself. When things start going wrong, I just go quiet, and I'm just like I just start trying to process. And he was just the me that wanted to just shout, and I appreciate that all day long. But to get a bit more serious about it, that they just seemed to just be sliding off them. They were aiming for the wrong points. They were trying to be too cute. Like there was one particular tackle that sticks in my mind, and I can't remember who it was on either side of the ball, but it was like he was trying to kind of be like, I'm just going to come in at the angle, and I'm just going to slide round him, and it's just going to be a simple, like kind of a hip drop tackle, but just going to slide round him, and he just literally just flew past him, like almost like he touched him. He caressed his thigh as he flew past, and
Still
it's like,
talking about a P Diddy concert, or
no, we are talking about tackling now. Don't worry. And it was just, I think that was the moment for me that I went, we're fucked. Because when that happens, it's like something's fundamentally wrong. Whether it's Fangio,
Kobe Dean missed 33% of nearly 30% of those missed tackles alone on Nakobe Dean. I said at the start of the year that I do not like Nakobe Dean. I don't think he's good enough because he's horrible in pass coverage. He looks like a statue. Devin White, anyone?
Where's he? Exactly. It's just something's fundamentally wrong. I know you're going to touch on Fangio in a moment, but
anything different, please.
There isn't anything to be said. It's just Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, just that whole side of things.
Nolan Smith was lined up at off-ball linebacker in pass coverage against Chris Godwin. I'm
He
just
just,
gonna
yeah,
feed
just
straight
like,
into my Fangio bit in a second, but like, what the fuck are you doing? Chris
yeah.
Godwin is one of the best receivers in the NFL.
I think we should just go into the Fangio
All
section
right,
because
fuck
I've
it, I'll
said all
get
I
into
can
it.
about the tackle. I don't know if Tony's got anything to add about the tackling, but yeah,
No, it was
I-
shite. They need to be better. It's fundamentals. Nick Sirianni preaches only a few things. One of them is fundamentals, and if they're not doing the things that he preaches, I don't know what the fuck he's doing, because it's not working. Let me talk about Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio has been a nightmare for 3 of the 4 games we've had so far. The defense turned up last week. He changed it up. He played 5-man fronts. We were seeing pressure. Jalen Carter was wrecking the game. It was like, finally, we've got some confidence. Our defensive line can get to the pass, can get to the passer, can get to the quarterback. Our defense, our secondary is sticky in coverage. Baker Mayfield got the ball out in 1.9 seconds against the Philadelphia Eagles. The only reason he was able to get the ball out in 1.9 seconds was because the secondary was awful. That's the only way you get the ball out that quick, because otherwise, your cornerbacks, or they've either dropped off too far, because they're trying to stop the big plays, or they're just getting burned. But it was the former, and that's because of the system that Vic Fangio plays. It was shocking. He refused to adjust after the blistering start that Tampa Bay had. We were like a sieve on defense. Um, the center of the field was just open all the time. Like, really trying not to say something rude.
say
But
it.
like, no, because it was going to be very rude. so I'm not, so
I
I'm
can
not
beat
gonna,
that out.
I'm not going to say it. But like, it felt like our asshole was just gaping. Like, you know, that's the only thing I can say. And you're probably going to have to delete that out because my mum listens to this podcast, so please do. But like, basically, like, ah, where do you want to put it, Baker? Put it anywhere you want. Anywhere you want. We're wide open. Do what you want to us. It was embarrassing. The whole display on defense was embarrassing. The Eagles have persevered with this defensive scheme. And I will add, this is not just on Vic Fangio, this is on Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman, because they like this defensive scheme. Howie Roseman specifically likes this defensive scheme. Otherwise, he wouldn't keep hiring defensive coordinators to play this type of scheme. It had it with Gannon. It was embarrassing with Gannon, although bloody hell, I'd take Gannon back in a heartbeat right now. And doesn't that say something? Right?
That's an
This,
interesting point. I thought a very similar thought the other day, Liam, and I thought about bringing it up, and I completely forgot about it until
yeah.
you mentioned it. Then I was going to put a question saying like all the
We
shit that we said
we're
about Gannon,
like
like as
wearing
boring as
sacks with Gannon.
as
Like,
well.
it's so funny, isn't it? When you
I
look
mean,
back
I'll
at,
put a little
yeah.
bit of that down
Sorry,
to
go on.
personnel as
I need to
well,
calm
but
down for a minute anyway.
but
So
but I
go
think
ahead.
Gannon was and to credit to ESP where it's due, he was very much like, he might not be exciting. And I said similar things, that you kind of had this consistent level of safety with him. Like, you knew the Eagles didn't tended to get blown out. They kind of stayed in games. They didn't allow things to get too bad. And he had that element of control. So whatever the reason is for that, whether it's Gannon or whether it's just the situation at the time, God, the fact that we're kind of looking back and going, maybe again wasn't so bad, suggests just how bad that game was and how it's made us feel.
It's horrendous. And Tony, me and Phil have been grandstanding for probably 10 minutes here on the tackling and on the defensive play calling. I'm not saying Big Fangio can't turn it around. And I do think, I really want to emphasize this on this podcast. I am fed up with players not taking responsibility and all of the blame being thrown at the head coach and at the coordinators and at Howie Roseman. I know they set the team and they set the culture, but the players have to do better. They have to do better. But that aside, this was embarrassing from Fangio. That performance alone, even if we go on a run now, Tony, and we make it to the playoffs, say we even make it to the Super Bowl, that performance alone is going to make me think we could lose any game for the rest of the year.
I don't disagree, Liam. And it's been interesting listening to the two of you and not have anything to say, because normally I'll jump in and I'll make a point or I'll throw in a wrinkle or a crease. I've simply got nothing to add. The the interesting thing that you've just mentioned there is Gannon, right? I hated Gannon.
So did I.
I absolutely detested him, and I still hold him responsible for us not winning our second ring a couple of years back. The one thing that Gannon did, though, well, actually, the two things that Gannon did, Gannon called his own plays, and he wasn't meddled with. So when it went wrong, it was on Gannon. It wasn't maybe on Gannon or maybe on Sirianni or maybe on them or the other. It was Gannon, and we held Gannon to account. I actually don't know who's calling this defense anymore. I don't know who's calling any of the plays anymore. But we'll come on to Sirianni. The big difference between
I want to just touch on that for a second, Tony, because I don't want to lose that point. And there's a risk of us not getting back to it. If you're going to talk to me about the offense, I completely agree with you. A couple of weeks ago, I would have said, this is Kellen Moore's offense. He's calling all the plays. And I defended Nick Sirianni in this podcast about the play call. You disagreed. And I'm going to come back. I'm not going to apologize because we all may take some are right, some are wrong. But I will say, I think I was wrong in that scenario. I think Nick Sirianni is impacting the offensive play calling. I don't think Nick Sirianni is impacting the defensive play calling. He's never called defense before. He doesn't even go to some of the meetings.
Questionable. I'm just questioning everything to do with Nick Sirianni now.
Yeah, I don't believe
we believed that Kellen Moore was running his own offense. Now it's come out that he's meddling. What's to say that he's not doing the same with Fangio? And
I don't think Fangio will let him. To be honest.
Well, as a head coach though, Liam, if you're watching what's happening on that field, and you guys have described it perfectly, the missed tackles. Why are we missing tackles? Because we're not covering, whether it's man, whether it's zone, we're just not covering. Baker's getting the ball out of his hands far too quickly, and before you know it, Godwin, Evans, Palmer, White, whoever you want, have turned on their heels and they're gone. And we've missed a tackle, and we've given up 105 yards as a result of all the missed tackles, as we've already said. However, the thing, just going back to the point I was making, the difference between Gannon and Fangio, and I think you could toss a coin as to who is governing the best defence out of the two sets of defences that we had, the Gannon defence and the Fangio defence. There's not a lot between the two. Different personnel, some
same system.
Same system, yeah. However, Gannon had his aces in places, and he played the calls to the strengths of the players that we had at the time. You know, whether it was, you know, the Reddicks, the Brandon Grahams, the Fletcher Coxes, you know, CJ, GJ.
Even James Bradbury had a Pro Bowl year under him.
Absolutely. All I have to do to call into question what is Vic Fangio doing is to watch the post that was made by Brian Baldinger.
I know you're going to say
with regards to Bryce Huff. So Bryce Huff had a 10-sack season last year, coming off a 4-point stance off the edge. Fangio has him coming off slightly inset to the middle of the field off a 2-point stance, and he's getting killed every time. At what point does somebody say? Correct. At what point does Nick Sirianni step in and say, you're going to have to adjust something here, mate, because it's just simply not working? Or at what point does Fangio, with all his 40 years of experience that we keep hearing about, that's never won him a Super Bowl, and I'll give you that one, Liam, you did pose that in the postseason. At what point does he turn around and say, actually, you know, it worked against New Orleans, I better do some of that, or I better have the guys pressing a bit higher up, I better disguise some of the schemes that I want us to run on this first, second, third down. It's just not happening at all.
Yeah, it was sad. It was sad to see, and I'm trying to think back to how I was feeling in some of these moments on Sunday afternoon, and I think it was just get me back to the bar, to be honest, because it was depressing, and it's depressing because if you look at the talent on paper, if you look at the talent on paper that we have on the defensive side, now we are young on defense. I will say that we are very young on the defensive side of the ball. Bar Brandon Graham, he brings our average age up by about 100 years. We are very young on the defensive side of the ball. Even Keely Ringo, and he's only what 22 or something. Keely Ringo still. Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, at key positions across the field, we are young. We are young on defense. But there's a lot of high draft picks in there. There's a lot of money invested in terms of salary, and they are not performing. Phil, I'm going to ask you a very blunt question. Who is at fault for the defense's underperformance this year? Is it Harry Roseman for pulling the roster together, or is it Vic Fangio for the way he's scheming the players he has?
I think it's the third option, but if you're only giving me two,
what's the third option? What, Nick Sirianni's fault as well, is it?
No, I think the players just aren't performing to the level that they should be. So I think it's going to be Fangio, because I feel like he's ultimately responsible, and he's the one who's calling the plays or calling the defensive schemes out. And he's like, Tony astutely pointed out, if Brian Baldinger, as intelligent as he is, can point out that the guy that they signed for 30-odd million is best in this position, and he's not playing him in that position, then yeah, Fangio is clearly the sort of person where he's either too stubborn, too ignorant, or whatever to take these little nuggets and go, I'll just do that. The keep it simple, stupid method. That don't try to overcomplicate it. Sometimes people try to sort of are too arrogant to think that things might actually work if they just take someone else's idea. I mean, some of the greatest billionaires in the world didn't invent their own product. They stole it, assimilated it, whatever. So it's just take people's good ideas and
I'm
make
always
them your
taking
own.
people's good ideas and making them my
Yeah.
own. I've made a living off that, Phil.
But I think ultimately, I look at the team and I'm like, I've always been a big advocate in most sports I watch that, like, the coaching can only take you so far. Then when you step out onto the pitch, there's a player's incentive. And if, for example, humor me for a second with Fangio, if he did recognise how the game started, that how Tampa Bay were running all over us, and he's trying to implement changes, there's an element of sometimes the players are too young, too inexperienced, too ignorant, too arrogant to just kind of go, oh, we're completely going away from it, and to adapt as quickly as it needs to be done. And I think that whilst Fangio is probably too stubborn, I don't think the players on defense have been good enough either.
Yeah, it's a good point. Right, we did say we were going to keep this podcast to an hour today. So I think what we'll do is we're going to have another podcast, ladies and gentlemen listening in. We're going to be doing a preview of the Browns game next week. And by God, if we don't beat the Browns, then if we don't beat the Browns, I will say I'm all out on Sirianni. I'll make that promise and that deal to you both here on this podcast. We've also got a load of comments and messages from the fan base, and I think we can do that on that podcast as well, because the previews never last anywhere near as long as the reviews. So I think we'll leave it there for now, folks. Thank you for listening in to another episode of the British and Irish Eagles podcast. I'm hoping that we're going to get Sheil Kapadia on with us next week as well. So we'll talk to Sheil. We'll do a preview of the game, and we'll get to some of your comments, which are what you're worried about right now, to give you a bit of insight. A couple of words I'm seeing here: Hurts ball protection, offensive strategy is a worry, Jalen making mistakes, game planning, no identity. We'll get into those in a little bit more detail next week. Otherwise, I fear we'll be here for another hour, and no one wants to listen to a 2-hour losing podcast. All right. Listen, Phil, thank you so much. Tony, thank you so much. Phil, especially for doing the notes today on such a short turnaround time for us. We are the British and Irish Eagles. We hope you enjoyed the watch along this Sunday just gone. We are sponsored by Loch Lomond. We are sponsored by Passyunk Avenue, and we have the trip coming up with Philly Sports Trips for the Jaguars game as well. If you've got any feedback for us, let us know. Give us a like on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. Give us a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us interact with you wherever you listen to your music. We've been the British and Irish Eagles. I'm Liam O'Neill. That's Phil Mann Stevens, Tony Brereton. We love you, Bird Gang.